I still remember the morning of my wedding. The sky was bright, but my heart felt heavy. My parents hadn't called. No message, no visit, nothing. I kept checking my phone, hoping to see their names pop up. Instead, silence filled the screen. Before I tell you how I got my revenge, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. I tried to smile for the camera, but inside, I felt invisible. I wasn't surprised, though. My parents had always favored my older sister, Mia. She could do no wrong. When I got accepted into college, they barely clapped. When Mia got a promotion, they threw a party. Standing in my white dress, I realized something. I had spent my whole life waiting for their approval. And still, they couldn't bother to show up for the most important day of my life. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my tiny apartment and made a promise to myself. If they couldn't see my worth now, one day, I'd make it impossible for them to ignore me ever again. The morning after my wedding, the silence in my apartment felt heavier than ever. My husband, Aaron, tried to cheer me up with breakfast, but I couldn't eat. The image of the 2 empty seats where my parents should have been kept flashing in my mind. Every bite tasted like disappointment. Aaron told me not to take it personally. Maybe they were busy, he said softly, but we both knew that wasn't true. My parents always found time for Mia. If she sneezed, they were there with soup. If I cried, they told me to toughen up. I stared out the window at the old street below and whispered the promise again, this time out loud. One day, they'll see me. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I would change my life. I would become someone they couldn't ignore. That night, while Aaron slept, I opened my laptop and started searching for online business courses. I didn't have money, but I had determination. I stayed up until dawn reading about marketing, design, and small startups. For the first time, I felt something stronger than sadness, hope. They forgot me yesterday. But tomorrow, they'd remember my name. I had no fancy office, no savings, and no one cheering me on. All I had was an old laptop that overheated every hour and a stubborn heart that refused to give up. Every morning, after Aaron left for work, I turned our small kitchen table into my workspace. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. At first, everything felt impossible. I didn't understand half of what I was learning. Terms like conversion rate and target audience made my head spin. But each mistake taught me something new. I kept a notebook where I wrote every failure, so I'd never repeat it. Weeks turned into months. I started offering small logo designs online. My first client paid me $50. It wasn't much, but when I saw that payment notification, I cried. For the first time, someone believed my work had value, even if my family didn't. Aaron cheered for me, saying, "This is just the beginning, Leslie." I wanted to believe him. Late at night, when the world was quiet, I pictured the future, my own company, my own success, my own worth shining bright enough to blind those who once ignored me. That dream became my fire. And I refused to let it die. My business grew slowly, like a plant fighting through hard soil. Every order mattered, no matter how small. I designed logos for local cafes, birthday flyers, and even pet shops. Each time I sent out a finished design, I felt proud. For once, I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. I was building something that was mine. Still, the silence from my parents hurt. Months passed, and not once did they call to ask how I was doing. I sent them a picture from my wedding, hoping to break the ice. They never replied. I told myself I didn't care, but at night, I scrolled through my messages, wishing for just one text that said, "We're proud of you." Aaron kept reminding me, success takes time. He believed in me more than anyone ever had. So I worked harder. I watched free business webinars, joined online groups, and saved every dollar I could. I wasn't rich, but I was getting closer to something real, freedom. Every time I looked at my growing client list, I whispered to myself, they'll see me one day. I didn't mean revenge anymore. I meant recognition. I wanted them to know I made it, without them. After nearly a year of long nights and endless learning, I got my first big project, designing a website for a small media company. The pay was substantial compared to my usual clients, and the work was challenging. I stayed up late, perfecting every detail, checking every font, every color, every line of code. When I submitted it, the client loved it. They even shared it with their business network. Suddenly, requests were coming in faster than I could handle. I hired a freelancer to help, carefully choosing someone who shared my vision. My tiny kitchen table had become the center of my growing empire. Even with this success, my parents remained absent. I posted a photo of the finished website on social media, hoping they might notice, but I knew better. Silence. Instead of disappointment, I felt determination. Every new client, every dollar earned, every glowing review was proof that I was building something meaningful. And one day, it would be impossible for them to ignore me. That night, I sat on our tiny balcony with Aaron. The city lights glimmered below, and I realized that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was creating a life that would make my absence in their eyes impossible to overlook. One afternoon, while working on a client's logo, my phone buzzed. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in months, Mia. My heart jumped before I could stop it. I hesitated but answered anyway. Leslie. It's been forever, she said brightly, as if we'd spoken yesterday. I waited for her to mention my wedding, but she didn't. Instead, she talked about herself, her new house, her vacation, her plans. Finally, she said, Mom and Dad were talking about how busy you must be. They said you've always been the quiet one. I smiled, though it didn't reach my heart. Yeah, I've been busy, I replied simply. After the call ended, I sat there, staring at my phone. So they did talk about me, but never called. Not even once. It was strange how the people who ignored your biggest moments could still act like everything was fine. Aaron found me quiet that evening. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, closing my laptop. Just thinking. That night, I made a new promise. I would stop waiting for their love and start focusing on mine. If my family wouldn't celebrate my life, I'd celebrate it myself, louder than ever before. After Mia's call, something inside me changed. I stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come. Instead, I poured everything into my business. I named it Noah Creative Studio, simple, strong, and mine. Seeing my name on the logo made me proud. It wasn't the name they gave me, it was the one I had earned. Soon, clients started recommending me to others. My inbox filled faster than I could reply. I began waking up early, creating schedules, and learning how to manage my time. The girl who once cried on her wedding night had turned into a businesswoman with goals and confidence. Aaron watched me with admiration. You're unstoppable, he said one morning, handing me coffee. I smiled. Maybe now they'll finally see what I can do. He looked at me gently. Don't do it for them. Do it for you. His words stayed with me. Every project I finished, every payment I received, every sleepless night, those were for me. Not to prove my worth to my parents, but to prove to myself that I'd always had it. For the first time in my life, I didn't just exist. I was building something real, something unforgettable. After 2 years of hard work, I finally saved enough to make a bold move. I wanted my studio to grow beyond my small apartment, so I found a modest office space downtown. It wasn't luxurious, but it had large windows, bright light, and room for a team. I signed the lease, my hands shaking with excitement. Aaron helped me move the few office essentials I had, laptops, drawing tablets, and stacks of notebooks filled with ideas. As I unpacked, I imagined the future, employees, bigger clients, and projects I could be proud of. Every sketch and plan on my walls reminded me why I started. That evening, I called a mentor I'd met in an online forum. She guided me through investments, budgeting, and hiring my first assistant. Her advice was practical and kind, exactly what I needed. I realized then that my family's neglect had pushed me to find support elsewhere. I was building a network of people who believed in me, who celebrated my work, and who treated me with respect. For the first time, I felt the thrill of independence. One day, I thought, they would notice. Not because I needed their approval, but because I had made something impossible to ignore, my own success, built from scratch. A year after moving into my office, I received an email that made my hands shake. A well-known design magazine wanted to feature Noah Creative Studio. They had seen our projects online and were impressed by our growth. I couldn't believe it. Finally, people outside my circle were noticing my work. I called Aaron immediately. "They're featuring us," I exclaimed, pacing the small office. He grinned. "I told you, Leslie. You've earned it." The feature highlighted our creativity, dedication, and innovative designs. My name appeared in print, alongside my studio's logo. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I read the article multiple times, savoring each word. This wasn't about my parents anymore, it was about me and the life I'd created. After the magazine hit stands, client requests flooded in. We were booked for months ahead, and I had to hire 2 more assistants. The studio that had begun on a tiny kitchen table now had its own identity. That night, as I locked the office, I glanced at the glowing city skyline through the window. I realized I was no longer waiting for recognition from my parents. I was living a life they could never take away. And when they finally noticed, it would be on my terms. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed a name I hadn't seen in years, Mom. My stomach tightened. I hadn't spoken to her since my wedding, and now, out of the blue, she was calling. "Leslie," she said, her voice unusually soft. "We need to talk. It's important." I paused, gripping the phone. Important? After years of silence, her timing was suspicious. "About what?" I asked cautiously. "There are family matters. Financial things," she said vaguely. Her hesitation only confirmed my suspicion. They didn't care about me, they wanted something. I listened quietly as she explained that Logan's business was failing and they needed help. My parents had finally noticed me, but not for me. They wanted my success to solve their problems. I closed my laptop slowly, feeling a mix of anger and amusement. All those years of neglect, and now they expected me to step in. I told her firmly, "We can discuss this tomorrow. But understand, I make no promises." As I hung up, I felt something shift. They had underestimated me for years, and now, I had the power to decide their fate. For the first time, the tables were mine to turn. After Mom's call, I spent the evening pacing my office, thinking. They expected me to rescue Logan, to bail them out of their mistakes. For years, they ignored me, and now they assumed I'd care because I had succeeded. Aaron watched silently as I laid out my options. "You don't have to do anything," he said softly. I knew he was right. But this wasn't just about refusal, it was about making a statement. They needed to see that I was no longer the invisible daughter. I pulled out a notebook and began outlining a plan. It wouldn't be cruel, it would be clever. I would maintain boundaries, protect my assets, and, if necessary, give only what I chose. They had taught me one valuable lesson: love withheld could never be earned. By midnight, my strategy was clear. I would respond, but only in ways that asserted my independence. They wanted access to my success? Fine, but only under my rules. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange calm. For the first time, I realized I didn't need their approval. I had built my life from scratch, and now, I held the power. This was no longer about waiting to be noticed. It was about showing them exactly who I had become. The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop Mom had chosen for our meeting. The smell of roasted beans filled the air, but it couldn't mask my nerves. I parked a little away, my Porsche glinting in the sun, a silent reminder of everything I had built without them. Mom and Dad were already seated. Their smiles were tight, controlled. Logan slouched in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. I walked in slowly, letting them notice my presence. Silence fell as I joined them. Mom tried to start with small talk, but I cut straight to the point. "You called because of Logan's business, not to check on me," I said evenly. "Is that correct?" Dad shifted, uncomfortable. Logan avoided my eyes. "Yes," Mom admitted. "We need your help." I studied their faces, seeing years of neglect flash before me. This was the moment I had waited for, their dependence exposed. "I'll listen," I said. "But understand, I'm not doing this out of obligation. I choose my terms." For the first time, I felt control. I wasn't the daughter they could push around. I was Leslie Noah, successful and independent, and they would respect that, or they would see the consequences. I pulled out my notebook, the one I had prepared the night before. Every detail of Logan's financial situation was listed, along with my expectations. I placed it in front of them, making sure each page was visible. "This is what I will do," I began. "I can help Logan, but only under conditions. No guilt trips, no manipulation, no assumptions that my success obligates me." I watched their reactions carefully. Mom's hands fidgeted with her napkin. Dad avoided eye contact. Logan's face tightened with impatience. I continued, "All assistance will be structured, transparent, and legal. Anything beyond that will require separate agreements. I will not be pressured." My voice remained calm, but firm. I wasn't angry, I was clear. Mom tried to argue, but I held up a hand. "I've lived years waiting for recognition that never came. I will not repeat that cycle. If you want my help, respect my terms." A tense silence filled the air. Finally, Logan muttered, "Fine." It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was acknowledgement. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a rare satisfaction. I was no longer a pawn. I was in charge. As I gathered my papers, I caught the way my parents were looking at me. It wasn't the usual mix of dismissal and pity. This time, it was something different, uncertainty, maybe even respect. For years, they had seen me as the quiet one, the follower. Now, they were seeing the woman I had become. Mom's voice softened. "Leslie, you've really grown." I met her eyes steadily. "No, Mom. I didn't grow, I rebuilt." The silence that followed was thick. Even Logan seemed unsure of what to say. For once, I didn't fill the space. I simply gathered my things, calm and composed. My success spoke louder than any words ever could. When I stepped outside, sunlight hit my face. My Porsche shimmered like proof of every sleepless night and every tear I had swallowed. I wasn't flaunting it, I was reminding myself that I had survived. As I drove away, I realized something powerful. I no longer needed revenge. Their recognition, though delayed, was just a reflection of what I already knew, that I was enough. Still, a small voice inside me whispered, "Let them see what they lost when they chose to ignore you." That evening, I sat in my office, letting the city lights wash over the skyline. I thought about all the girls I had once been, the ones overlooked, ignored, and underestimated. I wanted to do more than succeed for myself. I wanted to create something lasting. The idea came suddenly, a scholarship foundation for young women in creative fields. I could provide resources, mentorship, and guidance they might never get otherwise. I grabbed a notebook and began drafting plans, funding, applications, criteria, partnerships. Every detail mattered. Aaron peeked in, curiosity in his eyes. "Another project?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. But this one matters more than any client or contract. I want to help girls who have potential, who are invisible the way I once was. We spent hours brainstorming, researching, and outlining the foundation. By midnight, I had a clear vision: the Noah Creative Scholarship, a way to lift others while asserting my independence. It wasn't about punishing my family, it was about creating a legacy that mattered. As I closed my notebook, I felt a rare peace. I was no longer building just a business. I was building impact. And this time, it was completely on my terms. Weeks of preparation passed in a blur. I registered the foundation as a legal entity, drafted applications, and set up a website. Every step reminded me that I was creating something bigger than myself, something my parents could never take away. The announcement went live quietly, sent to local schools and art programs. Within hours, emails began pouring in. Girls from all over the state shared their stories, their dreams, and their struggles. I read each one carefully, feeling a connection I hadn't realized I was missing. Erin helped me organize interviews for finalists. I met each candidate virtually, listening as they described their ambitions. Their determination and creativity reminded me of the girl I had been: ignored, underestimated, but resilient. That evening, I paused to reflect. My parents' neglect had once made me feel invisible, but now, I was creating visibility for others. For the first time, my success wasn't just about me, it was about impact, empowerment, and opportunity. As I closed my laptop, I smiled. They would notice the foundation eventually, sure, but it wouldn't matter. I wasn't building for their approval. I was building a legacy. And this time, the power was entirely mine. Within days of the scholarship announcement, the foundation began attracting attention. Local newspapers ran short pieces about our initiative, highlighting the scholarship's mission to support young women in creative fields. I read the articles carefully, noting how the narrative emphasized empowerment and independence, exactly what I wanted. Emails kept arriving, some from parents, others from teachers, all excited about the opportunities we offered. I responded personally to each one, feeling a growing sense of purpose. Every story I read reminded me of my own overlooked achievements, the milestones my parents had ignored. Then, a surprising notification popped up. Mom had shared an article about the foundation on her social media. I frowned, realizing she was trying to associate herself with my work, yet she hadn't reached out personally. Her timing didn't matter, I wasn't seeking her validation. Erin laughed softly when I mentioned it. They notice what they can't control. I smiled, realizing he was right. My parents' recognition, or lack thereof, had nothing to do with my success. The foundation thrived because it was real, deliberate, and impactful. Their sudden awareness only reinforced a truth I had learned years ago. My worth wasn't tied to their approval. A week later, the calls and messages began. Mom texted incessantly, her words swinging between desperation and guilt. Dad emailed, politely formal but insistent. Logan sent passive-aggressive reminders about family responsibility. They wanted a meeting. They wanted influence. I read each message carefully, my hands steady. Years of neglect had taught me one thing: boundaries were essential. I didn't respond impulsively. Instead, I drafted a single email outlining how all communication would be handled going forward. Any family inquiries regarding the foundation would go through my attorney. When Erin read it over, he nodded. Clear, professional, unbreakable. Sending it brought a wave of relief. For the first time, I was setting terms, not them. No manipulation, no guilt, no obligation. I wasn't cutting them out of my life entirely, but I was claiming control. Later, I reflected on the irony. The people who had ignored my milestones now scrambled because of my independence. Their panic, their attempts to reclaim influence, only highlighted how much I had grown. I smiled quietly. They had learned what I already knew: Leslie Noah was no longer the invisible daughter. I had power, clarity, and the right to choose how they fit, or didn't fit, into my life. The Foundation's committee selected our first scholarship recipient, a 17-year-old filmmaker named Clara Jensen. Her application video was raw, authentic, and full of determination. I watched it twice, feeling a strange mix of pride and recognition. She reminded me so much of myself at that age, unseen, underestimated, yet fiercely determined. We arranged a virtual meeting. Clara spoke nervously at first, but her passion soon filled the screen. She described her projects, the obstacles she faced, and the teachers who had supported her when others didn't. I nodded, listening intently, offering advice and encouragement where I could. "This scholarship means more than the funds," I told her. "It's about being seen and valued for your work. Never settle for anything less." Clara's eyes brightened, and I felt a surge of fulfillment. For the first time, my success wasn't just for me, it was a bridge to someone else's dreams. Later that evening, I reflected on the irony. My parents had spent years ignoring my achievements, yet here I was, creating visibility for a young woman who deserved it. The foundation wasn't about revenge, it was about legacy. Through Clara and the other girls we would support, I was building something lasting, meaningful, and independent of the people who had once made me feel invisible. The following morning, my phone buzzed non-stop. Mom, Dad, and Logan had discovered Clara's selection through social media and news coverage. Their messages were frantic, alternating between feigned pride and subtle blame. They wanted recognition, involvement, anything to reclaim connection or control. I read them calmly, savoring the quiet power I held. For years, their neglect had left me invisible. Now, their attempts to insert themselves into my life felt hollow, almost laughable. I didn't respond immediately. I let the messages sit, each one a reminder of how far I'd come. Aaron peeked in. "They're panicking," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And that's fine. I won't be manipulated." By afternoon, they escalated, calling the office directly. My assistant, following instructions, directed them to my attorney. I didn't flinch. This was the first time I fully realized the impact of boundaries. Control was no longer theirs to claim. Later, as I reviewed Clara's follow-up submissions, I felt a warmth and purpose I had never felt with my parents. Their approval no longer mattered. I had created a space where recognition and support were genuine, where ambition and talent were celebrated, and where my success was defined by action, not their attention. Days turned into weeks, and the barrage of messages from my family continued, each attempt more desperate than the last. Mom's texts shifted from concern to pleading. Dad's emails were carefully worded, yet laden with guilt. Logan tried to negotiate influence over the foundation. I watched it all unfold with quiet resolve. I didn't respond directly. I reviewed my rules with Aaron, all communication routed through my attorney. No personal contact. No emotional manipulation. This was the first time in my life I truly felt the power of setting boundaries. Sitting in my office, I realized how much this mattered. Boundaries weren't punishment, they were protection. For the first time, I was free to focus on the work that mattered, the foundation, the girls, and my own life. Later, Clara sent a thank you message. Her words were full of gratitude, hope, and determination. Reading them, I felt a sense of validation deeper than any acknowledgement my parents could have given. I smiled, knowing I was investing in real impact, not empty approval. For the first time, Leslie Noah wasn't trying to prove herself. I was building, mentoring, and supporting. And nothing, not guilt, not manipulation, not family drama, would derail me. A week later, the local news featured the Noah Creative Scholarship Foundation. I appeared on camera, calm, confident, and poised. Reporters asked about the inspiration behind the scholarship. I spoke clearly about the teachers, mentors, and supporters who had believed in me when my parents never did. Mom and Dad saw it immediately. Their notifications pinged non-stop, but I ignored them. For the first time, I felt untouchable by their expectations. Logan texted, feigning casual pride, but I knew better. Their sudden attention was rooted in convenience, not care. Emails from Clara and other scholarship applicants flooded in. Each one reminded me why I had built the foundation: to empower, to lift, to provide opportunities that would have been denied to me. I replied personally, offering guidance and encouragement. Aaron watched me work, smiling knowingly. "They'll notice," he said. "Yes," I replied. "But it won't matter. Their recognition doesn't define this work, it never did." By evening, the articles had circulated widely. Messages of support poured in from strangers, past colleagues, and mentors. For the first time, Leslie Noah felt truly visible, not to her parents, but to the world that actually mattered. Within days, the calls and emails intensified. Mom's tone shifted from pleading to accusatory. Dad sent carefully worded letters insisting on family responsibility. Logan attempted to argue about influence over the foundation, claiming it was a family legacy in the making. I read each message with a calm I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I understood the depth of their desperation. Their panic was rooted in a truth they had ignored for decades: Leslie Noah no longer needed their approval. I shared the messages with Aaron, who nodded. "They're realizing you aren't theirs to control anymore." I sat in my office, reflecting on how far I had come. I had once measured my worth by their attention, chasing validation that would never come. Now, I measured success by the lives I touched, the girls I helped, and the impact I created. Later, I reviewed Clara's latest project submission. Her creativity and confidence shone through. The realization hit me hard: I had turned neglect into opportunity, pain into purpose. My parents' attempts to manipulate me only reinforced my independence. Leslie Noah wasn't invisible anymore. I was powerful, focused, and completely in control of my life. 2 weeks later, my parents requested a meeting at a downtown cafe. I arrived in my Porsche, the metallic gray gleaming in the morning sun. Mom and Dad looked older, anxious, as if time had finally revealed the consequences of their neglect. Logan trailed behind, attempting casual composure. They spoke quickly, weaving apologies, justifications, and subtle demands into one chaotic thread. Mom's voice wavered between guilt and insistence. Dad tried to negotiate terms of involvement with the foundation. Logan wanted influence over scholarships, mentorship decisions, and press coverage. I listened quietly, my hands folded on the table. For years, I had sought their attention, their validation, their care, and received none. Now, their attempts felt weak, empty, almost irrelevant. "I hear your words," I said finally, my voice steady. "But the time for approval passed long ago. I have built something meaningful, independent of your recognition." They fell silent. The truth hung in the air: Leslie Noah was no longer the girl they ignored. I had power, boundaries, and purpose. Their desperation only confirmed my strength. Rising from the table, I left without looking back. I had chosen my path, my family, and my legacy, and nothing could take it from me. Back at the foundation, the morning sunlight poured through the tall windows. Clara and 2 other scholarship recipients were setting up for a collaborative project. I moved among them, offering guidance, adjusting camera angles, and sharing techniques I had learned over the years. The laughter, curiosity, and determination in the room reminded me of why I had built this space. This wasn't about proving anything to my parents or anyone else. It was about creating opportunity, visibility, and support for young women who deserved it. I glanced at the wall, where photos of past recipients captured achievements that might have gone unseen without the foundation. Each frame represented a voice, a story, and a dream realized. I felt a surge of pride and purpose that was entirely my own. Later, sitting in my office, I reflected on the journey. Years of neglect, missed milestones, and emotional manipulation had shaped me, but they didn't define me. Leslie Noah had emerged independent, resilient, and compassionate. I had chosen my family, mentors, friends, and the young women whose lives I touched. For the first time, I was fully free. I had transformed pain into purpose, rejection into empowerment, and absence into lasting impact. My legacy would be defined by action, not approval, and nothing could take that away. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.